Welcome to my humble abode, darlings. Come in out of the rain and get comfortable. I have a story to tell you, and I hope you enjoy. If you do, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. A case of time travel misuse. Damn it, I popped the pimple again. By Scare in a Box. April 20th, 2022. 5:55 p.m. Hello there, devoted viewers and newbies. It is your favorite scientist again, Dr. SM. Welcome to my channel, where we will be providing you with some science that's sure to be amazing. Get it? Because it's got the maze world in it? Never mind. So today, beakers clanged together in the hands of Dre as he burrowed through his packed and stuffy lab, trying to get to the desk at the end of the room. His computer was still playing the recordings from the day before, and he had no intentions of turning it off. His glasses were a hair breadth from sliding down his nose, and all he could do to prevent them from falling off was keep his head slightly tilted upwards. His hands were full of beakers, so he couldn't push it back properly, and he had to do all that he could to ensure that he got to the end of the room without tripping over. His white lab coat, which he had forgotten to button up, was not buying the idea of allowing him to go scot-free without crashing into something. It hooked itself to the microscope on the table just as he squeezed his way through, and the microscope went crashing to the ground with a large clang. "Sweet Adam's mother of elements!" exclaimed Dre, as the clang continued, getting his attention and throwing him off balance. One of the beakers in his hand almost slipped out of place, but he was lucky to have it in his grip properly. Finally, he got to the desk and laid them all down with proper care. The 4 beakers all contained toxic chemicals that mustn't even slip 1 inch. Finally, he straightened himself and pushed his glasses back on his nose properly. Then he scanned through his room as though it was his first time being there. His room was stuffy, cramped, and cluttered. Experimental equipment filled every inch of the space, leaving little room for anything else. There was a small bed in the corner, unmade and housing too many dirty clothes, barely large enough for one person to sleep on. The computer table was covered in papers, beakers, and various other knickknacks that had accumulated over time. In the center of the room stood a large workbench, littered with wires, tools, and various pieces of machinery. The shelves above the workbench were filled with bottles of chemicals, many of which were unlabeled and impossible to identify. The smell of chemicals and grease was overpowering, making it difficult to breathe, but that was absolutely no problem to Dre. He enjoyed his space just like that, as he loved to work alone. Despite the chaos and clutter, it was clear that the scientist Dre was a genius. His mind was always racing, always coming up with new ideas and theories to test. He spent countless hours in this room, poring over his notes and running experiments. It was a place where he felt most at home, and he was always eager to share his latest findings with anyone who would listen. "It's high time I put this room in order," he said to himself, as he placed both hands on his waist and stared around. Just as he started to clear up some things in the room, folding up clothes on his bed and putting them in a blanket, a beeping sound in the room caught his attention. The beeping was familiar, and it was something he had been expecting since the day started. He turned around swiftly, dumping the shirt in his hand back on the bed and dashing towards the sound. The hand-built machine he had spent the whole of the current year building was now ready, and since it connected to his computer, the computer was making a beeping sound to alert him that his invention was ready. The hand-built machine he had spent the whole of the current year building was now ready, and since it was connected to his computer, the computer was making a beeping sound to alert him that his invention was ready. The hand-built machine looked like a little microscope with a large, round base and a slender, adjustable arm. It had a small, circular aperture at the end of the arm, through which it shot a beam with the diameter of a coin. The beam was intense and focused, and not even Dre knew how far its power could go yet. Despite its small size, the machine was built to be incredibly powerful and required great skill to operate. Dre couldn't contain his excitement as he knelt by the machine, his face flushing with pride at his invention. He knew that this piece of equipment was going to be unlike anything anyone had ever seen before, and he was determined to make it a success. He was going to be a legend, he thought to himself, a topic of conversation for generations to come. Eager to document his achievement, Dre quickly gathered all of the papers and beakers scattered on his desk and moved them out of the way with urgency. He didn't even stop to think about where he was placing them. His only focus was on making room for his machine. Once he had cleared sufficient space, he carefully lifted the machine and placed it back on the table, with a grin on his face. Dre sat down to begin the process of fine-tuning and testing his creation. He knew that it was only a matter of time before he made history with his groundbreaking invention. After connecting it, he adjusted the lab coat on his body and then started to do a live video. April 21st, 2022, 4:23 p.m. The login was recorded automatically and read out loud by a computerized female voice, and the camera was in action. The message section of the live feed went into a frenzy as so many messages popped up. "Hello there, devoted viewers and newbies." Dre started with so much elation that he was shaking excessively in his chair. "This is your favorite scientist." He paused and pondered on what he was about to reveal, and he had absolutely no doubt in him that he could introduce himself better. "Screw that, guys. This is your greatest scientist of all time, and I'm actually here to tell you that it worked," he said, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Okay, I know I need to relax, but believe me, this is crazy. I haven't tested it, but according to diagnostics, I did. It gave off 99% accuracy, so that tells me it will work. Right now, I just need to test it out with something." Without finishing his statement, his brain processing faster than his body was, he got to his feet and dashed to the small fridge he had in his room. Not long after, he returned to the front of the camera with a whole apple. "Okay, so here's an apple," he said, raising the green apple in a way the camera would get full view. He then put the apple in his mouth and took a big bite, getting a large chunk of apple in his mouth and chewing, taking in all the juices. Even with the chunk in his mouth, he began to talk again, saying, "I believe you all saw this apple whole, and you agree with me that I just bit into it. Well, I hope you believe your eyes, because you are about to experience the impossible, the latest and craziest invention you've ever seen." He then placed the apple on the desk in front of the camera, then turned the machine towards the apple, pointing the aperture towards the apple. "Brace yourself, guys," he said with a giddy voice as he operated the machine. He then pushed the button, and a beam in the diameter of a coin shot out of the aperture and began working its wonders, making a sizzling and fizzling sound. Dre then turned it off, and to his amazement, just as he predicted, the apple was whole again, just as it was minutes ago when he removed it from the freezer. "Oh!" Dre screamed and squealed. He jumped out of his chair, elated, feeling so much euphoria burst through his body. "Holy molecules, I did it!" he repeated again for the 5th time, as he returned to his chair in front of the camera. He then picked the apple and rolled it all over, showing the camera what he had achieved. The joy that lingered in his heart was unexplainable, and he didn't even know what to do. "I just achieved time travel, causing the matter of the apple to return to its original self a few minutes ago. Wow!" he explained again. "That's crazy, I must confess, but I have done it. Incredible!" As he stared at the camera in awe, still shocked it actually worked, his eyes caught an ant moving across the table, and he reached out and smashed it instantly. He was about to get on with his live feed when an idea crawled into his mind. Oh, yes! Let's try it on this ant I just killed right here. He picked the cam from the monitor's frame and turned it to the dead ant. I believe you all see it's dead. Now let's perform some scientific miracle. Dre reached for his machine again and turned the aperture to the ant. With speed, he gave the instructions to the machine and hit the final button. The beam, shining with a vibrant red color, landed on the ant and began fizzling again. Not long after, the sizzling sound filled the room, and it stopped. Dre quickly stared down at the ant, and to his amusement, the ant got up, regained its legs again, and framed in the robust way they were before. Slowly it started to walk, and in a moment, it walked around as though nothing had happened previously. This time, Dre couldn't scream or squeal. His jaw just dropped as his machine had done beyond what he had imagined. It really was jaw-opening as he stared at the living ant. "It's alive!" Dre said, shock in his bones. "It lives! I just brought back a dead instinct, and wow! I really am a master genius," he said, chuckling as he got to his feet. He moved to his fridge and then brought out a canned beer, opened it, and gaggled down half the contents. Mesmerized, he walked back to the computer and stared at the camera. "Thank you," he said as he ended the live feed. He took another gulp from the can and stared at himself on the screen, wondering how he actually achieved the unachievable. Just then he noticed acne on his face and dropped the can in his hand. He put his fingers to his face, and with one long press, he squashed the acne, releasing pus and giving him a strange pleasure that sent goosebumps in his body. Another idea came into his head that instant. He reached for his machine and pointed it to his face. He turned on his video cam again and started saying, "April 21st, 2022, 5:11 p.m. It's me again. I've decided to try the experiment on myself. I'm going to trigger the machine and call on the acne that I've just caused to release some pus on my face. Let's see if it works." He then put in the instructions required and clicked on the button, and the beam shot onto his face, working perfectly and bringing back the acne to his face. "Oh, great! This is great!" he exclaimed. Then he reached for the acne on his face and pressed at it, causing it to release pus again. "Oh, that's strangely relaxing, I tell you. I should bring it back one more time, don't you think?" he asked, not minding his audience. He triggered the machine again, and just as it had happened previously, the acne returned, and excitedly he pressed it, causing it to release more pus. "Okay, that's soothing," he said with a giggle, pus covering a portion of his face already. "Again, just one more time." He repeated the process again, and before he knew it, he had squashed the acne again. He lost count and kept at it repeatedly, savoring the pleasure he derived from squishing an acne. Then he continued for hours on end, and before he knew it, it was completely dark, and the only source of light in the room was a sizzling bulb that went off and on. Tiredness had gotten the best of him as he laid there, totally exhausted and thirsty. He was now lying on the floor, his head over a pool of pus, and his hands and legs felt numb. He felt like a log of wood. He managed to summon all his strength and climb back to his chair. With the last burst of energy in him, he typed into the live feed, "Help!" So quoth this raven. My darlings, I must confess, I enjoy the pimple popping videos. But I don't think I would go this far. Maybe he's unable to stop because, it took him back to where he wanted to squish it. Anyway, that was a fun little story. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to Scare in the Box for always sharing their wonderful stories with me. And I will see you next time, darlings. Bye-bye. Thank you for stopping by, my darlings. It means so much. I so enjoy telling these stories for you. And here are some of my marvelous supporters. Please, if you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. If you give this video a like, it would help me out ever so much. Thank you, and have a lovely, lovely day.